How's it going, folks? Recording another best ball draft here. So it looks like we got pick number 2. So we will probably be taking Saquon or Zeke. And as most of you know by now, I'm Stephen Mullen. I write a best ball specific blog for Big Dogs Fantasy. And my blog is all about best ball. Not really too much season long stuff in there. There is a few things that, carry over to season long, obviously, but specifically trying to give you percentages and strategies, roster construction, ownership percentage, best ball specific rankings at points here, and all that stuff just for your best ball drafts. So it looks like we are about to get underway here. Stupid draft freezes every time when I start it. Once we are back in, we should be good to go. All right, let's see who goes pick 1 here. Right now, I'm trying to get my Zeke ownership level up a little bit because it went down while we were waiting to find out what was going to happen with the suspension stuff. So I'm actually going to take Zeke over Barkley here. I passed on Zeke quite a bit back when we didn't know what was going to happen with the suspension. I took some Camaras over him. I took some McCaffrey shares over him. So I had him down around 4%. I'm trying to get him up to 8 or so, which is the average. So in these 12-team leagues, when you start looking at your ownership percentages, the first piece of knowledge you need to start thinking about what you want to do with your ownership percentages is that a player will be owned on average 8.3% of the time, right? So there's 12 teams, 100% of the time divided by 12. You end up with 8.3. So on average, a player is owned by one team 8.3% of the time. So my rule for rounds 1 through 3 is any player I'm picking in rounds 1 through 3 that have those ADPs, I don't want more than 16% of them. So that's at 16%, you have 2 shares to the 1 average share, which is quite a decent amount. And because of how much draft capital you're using in those first 3 rounds, I don't like to go above 16% of any player. As the draft capital goes down that you're using, the more you can afford to have a higher percentage of somebody, because you're not going to pay the price as much if they get hurt or just happen to reek or whatever goes on. Wow, Le'Veon Bell ahead of Davante Adams. I'm not down with that. Le'Veon Bell I'm getting pretty low on. I just don't like him very much. So yeah, the average is 8.3. So a lot of people say, well, what's the minimum you want, like some sort of useful player, like say Todd Gurley, for example, or Tyreek Hill, while we don't really know what's happening with his situation. Although it looks like that's going to be a very short suspension, like maybe 4 games, could be even less. So for those guys that I'm really not into at all, like Todd Gurley, I try to have around 3%. And a lot of people are like, well, it's 3 out of 100 teams. That really can't make much difference, can it? Well, if you compare that to the average team, you're still getting 1 share to their 3, right? So 3% when compared to 8.3%, it's over a third. So you're still getting 1 share of that guy to the average team's 3, even at 3%. So it does make some difference. It's not good. It's not good for you if that player breaks out when you're at 3%, right? Or has a great year when you're at 3%. But it isn't nothing also. So if you just have the stone 0% of somebody and they have just a fantastic year, that really hurts you. The 3% can help mitigate that a bit. So my next ownership level up from that, I like to have is 5%, which is guys that I actually really do like, but these are like the guys that I am the most scared of as far as injuries go. So like maybe like a good example of a 5% guy for me would be Leonard Fournette, where I feel like there's nothing that can go wrong for Leonard Fournette other than him getting injured. But I think there's a high likelihood that he gets injured. That's some interesting choice here. So if it gets us and both tight ends are on the board, we're not even going to consider that because I could just take whichever one falls. I suspect that these two picks will be Damian Williams and Antonio Brown. So that means we're going to jump below tight end. I assume this is Antonio Brown. Oh, that's nice for us. We're going to take Antonio Brown. Getting him at the 211 pairing with Zeke. Very happy with that. If we miss out on Zach Ertz, that's fine. We might not even take Zach Ertz if he's there when we pick. But we will also consider it. So I would slam dunk. I mean, there's almost no chance that Marlon Mack gets through these two picks, but I would slam dunk pick him if it was our pick. Yeah, Zach Ertz went. That's fine with us. I have like a ton of ownership on the tier 1 tight ends, so. But that's not to say I would have passed on Ertz if he was there. He would have been given a strong consideration. So if this pick is Marlon Mack, then we kind of have like a difficult decision. Because those next 3 wide receivers I don't really have ranked terribly differently. Aaron Jones. That was a little early for him for me. So, yep, we're just going to take Marlon Mack and be on our way. So if I was picking between Thielen, Hilton, and Cooper, I think I would have taken Hilton just because I own quite a bit more Cooper, and I'm not quite as high on Thielen as those two. But I also don't own all that much Thielen, which is a little worrisome. So yeah, getting back to the ownership percentages. So yeah, we got our 3%, our 5%. So 8%, is when you want to own the guy on average. Like you want to have the same amount as the field of that guy. So some people for this are people that like I don't really like their ADP, but I do like the player quite a bit. So an example of a guy I'm looking to have around exactly 8% of is Andrew Luck. I like him the least of the tier 1 QBs by a good amount in best ball because he doesn't ever have stud weeks where he really crushes the field and outscores them by a ton and makes this huge difference for you. But his raw point total is still so awesome and his situation is still so awesome that you don't want to be below the field on him. But at the same time, I'm not really like looking to have tons of round 6 Andrew Luck, right? I like pretty much only try to take him around 7 unless I already have T.Y. Hilton. Then I might move him up to round 6. But yeah, for the most part, Andrew Luck is a guy I want to own exactly 1 equal share to however many the average team has. So he's a perfect example of an 8% person. So yeah, I was saying rounds 1 through 3, my max percentage that I want to own any of those guys because of how much draft capital you're using is 16%. Once you get into the rounds 4 through 9 grouping, I don't mind having up to 25%. So 25%, you have 3 shares of that guy to 1. And like somebody in that range that I have around 25% of that I'm comfortable with is David Montgomery. Like he's a guy I'm really high on. I got a ton of my shares in round 5 or 6. So another thing you have to keep in mind when you're trying to dream up your ownership percentages and where you really want to be compared to the field is like how much you were able to get a deal on some people, right? So on David Montgomery, I got a ton of round 6 and 5 shares of him after the draft. So I'm comfortable being at 25% with him. But I think if you're just paying for round 4, like if you're only paying the round 4 price that you can play now, that you should be targeting 16% of him. But because I got so much at such a good price, like I can afford to have more of him than that. And my very last really like percentage ownership to talk about is guys rounds 10 through 18, like your best flyers and those type of people, your best value picks. I'm comfortable with having up to 32% of those guys, but I actually only have 32% of two people right now. So that should tell you, like, even though I'm comfortable with it, it's not really like I'm not looking to get that high a percentage. So the two guys I actually have 32% or more of currently are I have 34% Justice Hill, which actually could keep climbing just because I think once preseason hits and people actually see Justice Hill play, that he's going to get moved all the way up into round 8 or 9. Like, he's a much bigger, stronger, faster version of Tariq Cohen, I think. And he can just do a lot more. He can actually get into like some sort of workhorse role if Mark Ingram were to be injured. A lot of people say Gus Edwards would take that role. It's possible. I'm not saying that Justice Hill would be a lock for it, but I do think there's a good chance he could outperform. This is going to be interesting right here. Oh, that is beautiful. An almost round 5 Tyreek Hill. This is an extremely hard thing to come by these days. So we're going to scoop that up. I'm generally, not thrilled with it. We still don't know what the Tyreek Hill situation exactly is. It could still go like super sideways on us, right? It's a bad situation, but right now you can't get a late round 4 Tyreek Hill. It just doesn't come up. Like, he's going at the 4-2, the 4-3, sometimes even in round 3. There's talk now that he could even face a lower suspension than the 4 games with the new news that came out, of them getting more of the audio recording. It's really hard to pass on around 5 Kenny Golladay. As much as I would like to have a third running back, we're going to take Golladay there. So especially with us having Tyreek Hill and the potential for the 4-game suspension or greater still, that's still out there. So I'm not really looking to have a ton of Tyreek Hill. My target percentage for him right now is still 3 to 5%, and I'm hanging out at I might be down to 2% at the moment because I've just, even though I'm trying to get my percentage up, I'm still just not taking him really round 4. I'm out on that, so I might start to consider it mid round 4 to get my percentage points on him up a bit here with the new news that it's looking like the suspension could be even less than 4 games, but we'll see. Yeah, just so normally, that's a guy I wouldn't be taking there, but with the way these drafts have been going and me wanting to get an ownership percentage up on him a little bit, I felt like that was as good a spot as we were going to get. I did get a Tyreek Hill at 5th round, pick 8, and then not too distant past. That felt really good. So, quarterbacks are on our radar based on what wide receivers we already have. Well, Patrick Mahomes, who's off the board. Derek Carr and Stafford, who are very late round picks. So if we do end up with a tier 1 quarterback, we'll probably just look to back him up with one of those guys, or at least have it in our mind that those guys are available. Wow, I really wish I was picking down late round 5 to get Phillip Lindsay at the 5'11". He's a guy I'm currently, I believe, at 2% because I'm never in the situation that RKO was there where he falls to late round 5. I got him at round 5, pick 9 a while back, and I believe that's the last time I picked him. I can't remember exactly when that was. It was like weeks ago. Darrell Henderson off of the 6-1. So Darrell Henderson is another guy like I got tons and tons and tons of shares of Darrell Henderson round 10, round 9, round 8, round 7. Now he's in round 6. There's very rare times where I take him, right? So, like, I have to readjust what my percentage cap is for him based on the fact that he's not getting drafted anywhere near where he used to be, right? So I started off with 57% Darrell Henderson after a few weeks after the draft, and I was completely comfortable with that because I knew, man, he's going to go up, and it's not going to stop. It's just going to keep going up more and being more crazy. So I was like, I'm down for, whatever it ends up being. I'll just fade him later. It's much easier to lower your ownership percentage than it is to bring your ownership percentage up, right? Because all you got to do to get it down is not draft a guy. It's not a really difficult thing to do. But to get it up, you have to fight other people, pick the right spots, sometimes reach a half a round early on guys, like all that kind of stuff. So I don't think the guy before us took Pat Mahomes, did you know? So the guy before us has 4 running backs and no wide receivers. That's interesting. And I believe he has Zach Ertz too. Take a look at his team here in a sec. So this is the guy who picked first. He's got Kamara, Aaron Jones, Drake, James White. So, like, that James White pick was pretty abysmal, in my opinion, by that guy. He should have been taking, like, almost anyone else. Like, that's the pick that got us around 5 Galladay share, which is a rare occurrence. So if it gets to us, I don't really care about between Lamar Miller and Latavius Murray which one I would get. So I get my pick of a tier 1 quarterback basically because I don't want those guys. I'm trying to get my Deshaun Watson up to 16%. He's my favorite quarterback in tier 1 for value. I have him ranked number 2 overall, but I would rather have around 6-7 Watson than around 4-5 Mahomes. And I like Watson a good amount more than Rodgers and Luck. I just feel like the ceiling is quite a bit higher. So if this guy just ends up taking Lamar Miller, he's one of the people we're interested in, but we don't really care. We'll just take Latavius Murray. If we have to pick between the two, which I guess is fairly likely to happen, I'm not taking Christian Kirk this time up here. I think we can find better value at. I think we can find better value at wide receiver than Christian Kirk in this early in round 7. So good. Yeah, I think that was the right pick to snag Watson, especially since you saw him tank on this pick. Between Latavius Murray and Lamar Miller, who are my first ones? We got Mac and we've got Zeke. I'm going to take Lamar Miller. Now we're giving up some top end there on Latavius Murray. So basically, I made that pick because, like, I have quite a decent amount of Latavius Murray. He's a guy I'm looking to stay at 8% on right around the field. If Alvin Kamara gets hurt, then he obviously smashes. So I think because of that, we should maybe moving up our Latavius Murray ownership a bit, maybe up to 10 to 12%. So we should probably be a little over the field on him. So Leia, given that same choice, another draft, we'd probably take Latavius Murray there. So far we've got quarterback, 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and no tight end. But one of our wide receivers is Tyreek Hill, so we have to keep in mind that he will not be playing some amount of games, we think. If I were to put a guess on it right away, I would guess that it's 4 games. But yeah, it could be less than 4 games. So we've got Deshaun Watson, so we're really going to wait quite a while on our next quarterback because we'll be either looking to take Carr or Stafford, which means we could kind of start to think about like, do we want to acquire any other players that would go into the stacks for those guys? And yeah, we do kind of. TJ Hawkinson's on my radar, and Darren Waller's on my radar. So, I mean, that's not to say we would pass some incredible value at quarterback if it just so happens to fall in our lap. We'll have to wait and see if that happens. So let's take a look at these other teams. This guy still doesn't have a wide receiver. This is insane. So this is the guy who picked up Aaron Rodgers that I think we kind of sniped with our Deshaun Watson pick, since he tanked so long on his pick before picking Jared Cook. So he has no wide receivers. Cook and Ertz. Yeah, I don't like that. Ertz kind of gonna block Cook a lot of weeks. Aaron Jones' pick was a little early for me. Kenyon Drake was not too terrible, but I don't really like him that much. Let's take a look at another one of these teams. It's my team. This guy only has 2 running backs. Bet you he was annoyed that we took second running back, Miles Sanders. So yeah, he obviously just didn't like Latavius Murray much and was probably pretty furious when we took Lamar Miller. Maybe he just wow, Darius Guy's still on the board. That's awesome value. Hope he doesn't make it to this guy. Could just be that he really liked these wide receivers. I mean, I like Robbie Anderson and Dante Pettis a lot. Now he's setting up, he could end up with Kittle, Pettis, Garoppolo, which is nice. I haven't been paying attention to the picks as much because of talking, but man, it seems like there's a lot more good players on the board than there usually is at this point in the draft. Yeah, so Corey Davis usually isn't off the board this early. Austin Hooper isn't. A lot of the times these tight ends will last until round 8, sometimes even longer. Not this one, obviously. So, I mean, it looks like we're 100% going 0 tight end, which is fine. I haven't even brought that up this video yet, but seeing as there are no tight ends for us to even consider drafting at this point, we're going to go 0 tight end. I wonder if that guy took Jared Cook because he was mad that we sniped him on Watson and thought that we cared about that, which we did not. So almost everyone still on this board does a really good value on Geis at 8-7. Geis is a guy that I'm 5%ing. I don't want him as much as a field because the situation's too screwy and the injury and all that. Ooh, Marvin Jones on before us. Ugh. Really don't like taking Ronald Jones here. I don't really think I can do something else, though. I could take Kiki Cutie. Yeah, I just don't want another Ronald Jones share right now. I just have too many. Gonna take Cutie. He'll go with our Watson and especially be a nice combo with our Watson if something happens to Will Fuller, although something happening to Will Fuller is bad for Watson, so we will let Waiver Wiz have all of the running backs. You can take running back number 5 now. There's 3 people on this board I want kind of more than the others. So we should at least get one of them. D.D. Westbrook not among them. All right, so now you're offering me Ronald Jones again in round 9. Fine. Fine. I have quite a decent amount of ownership of both Ronald Jones and Peyton Barber, which is nice, but it's not going to be nice if something happens where they just end up, with a running back off some other team being their starting running back, which, with the way they're speaking at a camp, you wouldn't think that's going to happen, but I do think it's still a strong possibility. If somebody gets cut that coaching staff really, really likes, I don't think there's a lock for it to be Ronald Jones and Peyton Barber in Tampa. I think somebody else could join that party still. And I know the coaching staff is talking like both of the guys up. We're really happy with their situation. But, if you ever want to acquire another player or make a trade or something, like, what else are you going to say? You can't be like, well, kind of hate our situation at running back, because then you take away all your ability to negotiate, because people know where you're at. So let's take a look at the team. Got Zeke, Marlon Mack, Lamar Miller, Ronald Jones, Antonio Brown, Tyreek Hill, Golladay, and Cutie, and Deshaun Watson. Looking pretty solid. Pretty happy with this team. We don't even really need to be that worried about taking a tight end anytime right off the bat here. Who's next up on the boards? There's Trey Burton. It's kind of nice that Goddard has fallen more into round 11. I think I didn't really like taking Trey Burton in my 0 tight end when I first started the strategy, and the reason was because oftentimes if you took Burton, that meant you didn't get Goddard, but now I'm finding that's not the case anymore. Goddard's moving down the list, so sometimes you can get both of them. So being that the guy in front of us has 2 tight ends, we're not going to take a tight end with our next pick, but we might take one with our round 11 pick. We could think about a quarterback if we feel like there's incredible value on the board. I don't know. There's nobody on the board where I'm like, man, I just can't pass that up. There's still a ton of tier 2 QBs on the board, but I guess it's worth consideration that we could take a quarterback. Golden Tate and Dante Moncrief interest me a bit. Could do something like Russell Wilson plus DJ Metcalf with our 2 picks. Damian Harris, definitely a guy we have interest in, especially if we were to fall to the 10-11, which I don't think will happen. Breeze off the board. I have Newton higher than Russell Wilson. I think I have Winston higher too. Dak is in my tier 2 of quarterbacks, so his ADP has actually changed quite a bit. He used to not get drafted until the tier 3 quarterbacks, Dak, so I had a really high percentage of him, like 30-something% for a while, because he was going much later than he is now. So I have Winston ranked the highest of the quarterbacks left on the board. So next Monday, which will be the 15th, there will be an article released that's quarterback rankings, stack options, tiers, basically everything best ball for quarterbacks. Kind of interesting that this is the latest I've seen Damian Harris last in forever. If he gets by one more pick, we are not even considering anyone else at this pick. Wow. So we're going to take Damian Harris. And then if this guy doesn't take Trey Burton, we're going to take Trey Burton. Maybe we could set up some sort of Burton and Anthony Miller with Trubisky stack too. We don't have to stick ourselves just with Carr and Golladay. But Carr and Golladay being the number ones for their quarterback make it a little bit more interesting. And Anthony Miller just went off the board, so that's the earliest I've seen him go. Around 10. Snatch up Trey Burton. Not a guy that I'm thrilled to see as my number one tight end, but when you consider the rest of our team and the fact that the tight end, there wasn't even really a point where we could consider taking a tight end, I don't think. We missed the tier 1 tight ends, which was fine. We would have had to take Zach Ertz over Antonio Brown, which I would not do. Go Dirt. Maybe this guy is also on the 0 tight end plan. No, that was his 3rd tight end. Okay. So we're not going to get Goddard in our 0 tight end, but it's also not the end of the world. We have other plans for that. I did take Burton first because I have been able to get Burton and Goddard a decent amount on the same team. Basically in this exact situation. So it could get a little interesting if a lot of tight ends start flying off the board, because one of our favorite value picks is Darren Waller, and by taking Burton, we block by week 6, so we cannot take Darren Waller on this team. Also, if one of the tier 2 quarterbacks is still on the board when we pick them, we probably have to take them, but I would assume that they all go before that for us. So all of Wilson, Prescott, and Roethlisberger are in my tier 2 for quarterbacks, with Roethlisberger being the last one of that tier for me. So we're definitely going to be forced to go 2 quarterbacks, 3 tight ends here. Deshaun Watson is the only tier 1 quarterback where I have interest in having 3 quarterbacks, just because he runs a lot and can get hurt. Usually when you're using that much draft capital is to get one of the tier 1 guys, you don't want to go 3 quarterbacks. But sometimes the situation comes up where I have Deshaun Watson and Kelsey, or Deshaun Watson and Ertz, and in those spots I will actually go 3 quarterbacks, because I feel pretty comfortable with Ertz and Kelsey and their injury histories. I know Ertz has missed some games, but I feel like Ertz is definitely safer than Deshaun Watson. So as far as if it's Kittle, that's a toss-up to me. If you have Kittle and Watson, if you should go 3 tight ends or 3 quarterbacks, really depends on what type of value guys fall to me. So Mark Andrews went too. He was kind of a guy we were interested in having as our next tight end. This could be a decent spot to take Hawkinson. Hawkinson's a really strong tight end too, I think, and would set us up for Golladay, Hawkinson, Stafford stack. Especially since the last of my tier 2 quarterbacks went off the board. So if it gets to us at the 12-11 and Justice Hill's on the board, that's obviously our pick, which would close out our running backs. We'd already have 6. So ideally, our next 2 picks are Justice Hill and TJ Hawkinson. But we'll see if one of those guys gets taken before our pick. Or maybe Waiver Wiz goes for his 3rd tight end, snatches up Hawkinson. But if that happens, we'll just adjust and come up with another plan. So yeah, you see how often you're formulating plans during these drafts and having to reevaluate based on what kind of value is presented and what your opponents do. So yeah, I will point out one major mistake that I made this season that I would not repeat next season is when that original audio came out of Tyreek Hill. I just thought there was no chance they would get less than an 8-game suspension, and now it's almost 100% going to be less than that. So I just had almost 0% of him for a long time. So I should have had, my rule of 3%. If I was sticking to that, I would feel so much better right now. Because with taking him with these picks that I've taken him with, I would have bumped him from 3 to 5%. And then if he was missing, 4 or less games, at least I'd be in pretty good shape. But that situation is going to be pretty disastrous for me as far as best ball goes. There's nothing you can do about it now other than to draft the best teams that you can. So you can't really worry about things like that too much, but you do have to, keep them up there. Say if some similar situation comes up next year, boy, I probably need to start taking some of that guy. Wow. Thank you. Don't understand how Justice Hill is available in round 12 at pick 11, but I'm down. So no more running backs, so I can just go away. There's no circumstance where we're drafting another running back, regardless of what kind of value is presented to us or anything like that. Still some pretty decent quarterbacks up on the board. I think I'd rather wait till it comes back around to us and then try to get one of Stafford or Carr in the next go around, especially with how many decent people there are up on the board. Also, there isn't a single team that has 0 quarterbacks right now, so that's good. So if he's not taken here, then Hawkinson is our pick. Probably going to have to go Jordan Reed if he is. All right, pretty happy to get Hawkinson here. Nice. So for our next picks, we're going to probably be looking at Carr or Stafford. Hopefully one of those two makes it back to us. It's definitely not 100% to happen. We could end up, having to dumpster dive into Andy Dalton or something like that, but you have to take your chances. Let's see what we got for other roster constructions going on here. We have a 0 tight end team. I should see what that team looks like. Gordon, David Montgomery, Mike Evans, Amari Cooper, Sammy Watkins, Tyler Boyd, Christian Kirk, Darius Guy. Oh, this is the guy that got guys so late. Jordan Howard. Andy was able to handcuff him with Peterson. That situation could actually end up just being terrible. Because what if they both just play some? Now you have 2 guys that are giant piles of crap, which I think is kind of likely to happen, unfortunately. So he's got Dak and Josh Allen. And he's paying the price, obviously, because I think he's going to have to take Jordan Reed as his number 1 tight end and then hold on for dear life and hope Jordan Reed somehow still stays healthy. But yeah, that's not the rest of his team. I mean, especially these wide receivers are crazy good. Anything else funky going on? Pretty much everyone has 2 quarterbacks now, except for me. I'll be looking to add that. Whether it be with Carr or Stafford. Kind of interesting if they're both there, which one would we prefer? But Carr went, so that's not even a question anymore. So now we're just hoping Stafford makes it to us. If he doesn't, I'm going to have to adjust plans, consider going with one of our tier 4 quarterbacks, which are Darnold, Andy Dalton, Nick Foles, and Mariota. Can't go Nick Foles because he has the same bye week as Watson, so he's off the board. Don't want to go Mariota because we're trying to only go 2 quarterbacks, and I absolutely do not ever want to own Marcus Mariota when I only own 2 quarterbacks. Stafford off the board. So basically we're hoping that either Darnold or Dalton makes it to us. I definitely wouldn't change my last pick of picking Hawkinson. So you got Stafford. Could pick up our 3rd tight end here also with our 2nd pick. Although there's only 2 tight ends I have any interest in on the board at the moment. I would have interest in Waller, but we have this bye week blocked. I don't really have much interest in Greg Olsen, but I have some interest in Jordan Reed or Noah Fant. Yeah, that was the guy with 0 tight ends I said would take Jordan Reed. Took Jordan Reed. Not surprisingly. I guess if I have to choose between Darnold and Dalton, I actually lean towards Dalton at the moment. Then I could pair him with Eifert. Kind of get out of the. I don't really want to have both the rookie tight ends on my team, so I don't really want to have Noah Fant. We could also just wait on tight end, but I'm going to take Dalton here over Sam Darnold. Those 2 guys are pretty close for me. Definitely like Dalton's weapons better. I like Dalton's coach better. Yeah, Darnold has kind of fell lower and lower on my board. He started off as a tier 3 quarterback that I kind of liked as a tier 3 quarterback, and the more I got into thinking about the Jets, the more I was just like, nah. Deebo Samuel got hurt. Let's deal with that. Huh. So I'm going to take Eifert to go with my Dalton as my 3rd tight end. And basically we're down to just now we're only picking wide receivers for the rest of the draft. There's a new yellow mark on Deebo Samuel, so I'm going to look up to see what happened with that. So I'm going to try to make an effort to talk a little more clearly for you guys. Been mumbling less. Trying to work on that. So far, do not see any injury on Deebo Samuel. Ooh. Minor hip injury. Oh, that was way back in June. Maybe they just never got around to sticking this yellow plus sign up there until now. So I'm certain it was not there before. So who would we like to fall to us at wide receiver? Either of these rookie wide receivers would be nice. I also like Crowder and Callaway as vets. I don't mind David Moore, but I kind of have a little bit too much David Moore. Not convinced that he's even going to have a role there, so I'd actually like to drop his ownership level down. I'd like to get David Moore right in that 8%. I've got as much of him as the average, but no more level. So there's some Gronk news about him working out with Tom Brady again. Interesting. There's not enough heat under it yet for me to start consider taking him in these best ball drafts, but it wouldn't take much more heat for me to get there. Just taking a look at my wide receiver bye weeks. There's nothing that stands out. There's no bye week right now where we have to start fading people. I think one of the guys we would like to get in round 18, I mean, it's not going to be a big deal if we miss him, but just because we took Dalton Eifert is maybe grabbing up a John Ross and seeing if he can finally do something this year. But that's a round 18 pick that we're not going to be worried about in our next 2 picks. My ideal next 2 picks probably go off the board the moment I say them. My ideal next 2 picks would be Antonio Callaway and somebody higher up on this list than Antonio Callaway, being Marquise Brown. But this guy's upside is just so high that I'm like willing to take the chance on. I think I have right around 8% of him. He's a guy I would actually not mind going up to 12% because he's going to become very hard to get if he makes it into preseason and does anything. And you can just completely fade him otherwise. Boy, Marquise Goodwin was just bad last year. Wow, Zay Jones just like keeps falling and falling and falling. Dude led the team last year in targets. I know that doesn't mean much, but just the fact that you can get him in round 18 now, I think is a little bit crazy. I think he will almost for sure have more catches than Robert Foster. But I like Robert Foster more as well. I'm with the public on that. I could see like not taking Marquise Brown because we have Tyreek Hill this time. Letting this be one of the times we don't take this incredible value pick that we're going to have a shot at. The guy I'm going to take first here, if he's not taken by the pick before us, is Callaway. I'm really going to take a wide receiver 3 before a potential wide receiver 1 just because I have Tyreek Hill. Nah. Let's get rid of that plan. At least the first 4 weeks, none of our, wide receivers will be on bye if we're out without Tyreek Hill, so there'll be that. All we've got to do is piece together 3 out of our other 6. I am not going to take Deebo Samuel and double down on the injured wide receiver crew, though. That will not be happening. I'm either taking Callaway or Trey Quinn here. Callaway's a really nice best ball guy because he's going to have some long touchdowns. And those weeks, he'll definitely be good enough to get into your flex or one of your wide receiver spots. How many of them will there be? Probably 3 or 4. At the most 5, but something. So we just need one more dude to finish our team out. Let's look and see what kind of roster constructions the other teams have. So, I've said it before in these videos, 6 running backs, 7 wide receivers is what you want. It produces by far the biggest winning percentage. It's actually quite an advantage if you're just always following that to go 6 running backs, 7 wide receivers. So then you have to pick between 2 quarterbacks or 3 quarterbacks, 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends. In the new quarterback article, we'll be discussing this a little bit. So it looks like this guy is going with the old 3-6-6-3. That's what I started my best ball career with. Back when I used to read articles, this was the accepted norm, unless he's going with 5 running backs, which is possible. So these 2 guys have 8 wide receivers. You really just don't need that many. I know it seems like you do because you're like, man, I have to start 3 wide receivers. I need to have tons and tons of them. Plus, wide receivers tend to have these blow-up weeks. Well, they're still blocked most of the time, right? You still can get a maximum of 4 in there, even if you're using your flex spot. So if you have 5 that do decent, you still get 1 sitting on the bench. Then if it gets to the situation where you're like, holy crap, I had 7 wide receivers and I didn't end up with enough to get in my starting lineup. I wish I had an 8th. Well, your team is probably a giant pile of crap at that point because if that's happened, you've had so many injuries that your team is just hopeless. So I would like, since we did take the Marquise Brown pick to go with Tyreek Hill, I'm definitely not going to shoot for an upside guy with my very last pick. I'm going to shoot for just a guy that I know will get us points. So, while he's healthy. So, like, my number 1 target right now to take with our last pick is, well, it'd probably be Trey Quinn, but I don't think he's going to last to us. After him, it'd be Ted Ginn. After Ted Ginn, it'd be Enunwa. I just don't know what to think of the Bills situation. So, even though I've been snatching up Zay Jones left and right in this round 18, we're not going to be doing that this time. We're also not going to be taking A.J. Brown because I don't know what his role is going to be right away to start, even though I have supreme confidence in him. With already having Tyreek Hill and Marquise Hollywood Brown, we're definitely taking somebody super safe with our last pick. If we can. If Trey Quinn and Ted Ginn both go, then I don't think we have anyone safe to pick. Gus Edwards. I will own 0% Gus Edwards unless something happens to Justice Hill or Mark Ingram in the preseason. So yeah, I never talked about actual 0% ownership. There's almost no one that I'm in for that for. So there's a couple guys I'm waiting on that I would get ownership for, but I'm currently going to hold at 0 until we see what happens with them, and that's Emmanuel Sanders. So I don't know if he can get back and play. If he gets back in there, I still don't think his ADP is going to go wild or anything just because Denver's offense reeks. So I don't think it'll be like having to fight that hard to get ownership percentages on him. And Jerick McKinnon is a guy I'm currently at 0% because his ADP is that of real players. If his ADP was around 17 or 18, I would have at least 3% of Jerick McKinnon, but I'm not going to take him where he's being drafted now. I'd rather wait and see if he has some sort of pass catching role in the preseason and even makes the team before I get any ownership on him. I do think with the Saints having some decent depth at wide receiver, Ted Ginn is not as safe as we would like. But I'm a little confused as to why they got Rashard Matthews. It's nice to have depth, but still 4 pretty decent wide receivers right at the top of this chart. I know we said we would consider taking John Ross in 18, but that was before we made the Marquise Brown pick and pooped all over that. All right, I'm going to take Trey Quinn. I didn't think we'd have a shot at him in this round. But I think he's a pretty safe guy to be getting a lot of targets in the slot in Washington. He's not safe in that he gets hurt a lot, but let's take a look at the team and rate it, and then we'll move on from this draft. So quarterback, we ended up with Deshaun Watson and Andy Dalton. I think you'd have to give that only a B. Most of the time when I draft Deshaun Watson, I'm giving myself an A- or a B+ on my quarterback situation. But it's usually, Deshaun Watson in a tier 3 QB, sometimes Deshaun Watson in a tier 2 QB, which is an A almost every time. But being that we had to pair him with a tier 4 QB for me, I'm definitely going to have to give this B- on the QBs. For running backs, we got Zeke, Marlon Mack, Lamar Miller, Damian Harris, Justice Hill, and Ronald Jones. I give our running backs an A. I don't really think you can hope to do too much better than that. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys I'm comfortable with. I'm a handcuff plus and Damian Harris. Tight ends, we ended up with Burton, Hawkinson, and Eifert. To see. You can't grade yourself any higher than that. They are a nice 3 guys that fit together, and we've got guys that will produce if they're on the field, but you don't know how much they'll be on the field. Then you've got the rookie that pretty much anything could happen with. I think Hawkinson has a shot at having one of the best tight end rookie seasons of all time, but that's still not that high of a ceiling. So our wide receivers, we got Antonio Brown, Tyreek Hill, Kenny Golladay, Kiki Cutie, Marquise Hollywood Brown, Callaway, and Trey Quinn. I would probably give that a B+ to an A-. It really depends on how long the suspension is for Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill gets 4 games. This is a B+. If he gets 8 games, this is probably a B, maybe even a B-. If Tyreek Hill ends up with 2 games, and this is obviously an A wide receiver group. All right. Down in the description for this, there will be a link to my Twitter and Instagram if you want to check those out. The Instagram is just a bunch of lists of best ball rosters. And feel free to tweet me any rosters you would like advice on or anything like that. There'll also be a link to... Which article would I want to put a link to in this one? I'm going to put a link to the original article, the first one that started all, the best ball primer, for you to check out roster constructions and stuff like that. Thanks for watching. Good luck in your drafts.